In this video we shall be looking at Google Camera version 2.1.037 released on April 16, 2014. In the process of reviewing this new update, we shall be looking at what's new with the interface and the panorama mode. There is a new feature called lens blur and the camera overall, and why the HDR mode is very important, and some negatives. By most part, this video was made using a Google Nexus 5, as that is the latest Nexus phone, and also the fact that it is using pure Android. So a camera app from Google represents the phone's official camera app. So the first thing we may notice is the default camera icon is changed, and clicking that launches the app into the previous mode that we used the camera in. Once the app is loaded, the buttons to select different modes slides away into the edge, and it can be pulled out from the same edge. There's also a black vertical bar on the side. That is because the preview image that we can see is exactly the same as the image that will be taken, which would be in 4:3 ratio. The settings button is also visible only when the mode selection buttons are visible. The settings menu is very simple and self-explanatory. Inside the advanced option, there is only the toggle switch for turning manual exposure on or off. Also, dragging from the vertical bar where the camera icon is brings out the pictures. Let's go over the different modes. The photosphere is about the same, so we'll skip that. Next is the panorama mode. The panorama mode has been changed. Instead of taking little slices of image, now we have dots. We align them and it takes one shot, and there's provision to go full 360 degrees and also take a shot to the right, and then you can go back to the left and take another shot. It's much more versatile now. The next mode is a brand new feature from Google called lens blur. Now, before we proceed, let me introduce to you Captain Barnacles. But more importantly, for purpose of this video, let's talk about bokeh. Various types of lenses create shallow depth of field, be it on a DSLR or wherever, where the subject is in sharp focus but the background is blurry, and bright objects or light sources make bright dots. The property of bokeh is very much dependent on the kind of lens used and how it is used to compose the picture. Certain lenses can run into thousands of dollars just on basis of the kind of bokeh it generates, but that is a different interesting topic. The camera app with the lens blur feature is trying to mimic the generation of bokeh. So how it works is, we take a subject and then press the shutter button, and then we have to move the phone up a little bit, and that puts the subject in focus and the rest goes blurry. And of course, if you are in very close range like I am over here, you can click on the subject you want to be on focus and then take the shot. If there's a bit of a distance between you and the subject, then clicking on the subject tells the camera where to keep in focus and blur the rest. Few other things about the lens blur mode is that it requires a bit of processing time. You can still continue to use the camera, except in the background the CPU will be processing the images. You can't instantly see the picture that you have taken. Once the image is processed, you get a few icons below the picture, all of them regular ones except one aperture symbol, and that allows the properties of the lens blur to be edited, meaning where you want the focus point to be and the amount of blurring that you require. At a distance, however, the lens blur feature isn't that perfect as much as we'd like it to be. The edge of the grass over here is in focus regardless of the changing distance, and parts of the subject is in focus and the other parts are blurry. Let's just say that it's a work in progress. The software is trying to understand distance, and it'll probably get better as Google releases a few more revisions. You see, at the background, the farmlands on the left is certain number of kilometers away, and it is coming in focus while the right side is completely out of focus, and things like that. They'll probably get it sorted as more revisions come through. As of now, it is a fun thing that they have introduced, and for close range it works quite nicely. If you can ask your subject to sit quietly for 5 seconds, you may be able to make a good composition. And let's keep in mind that it is all for fun. If someone's serious about getting good bokeh, should invest in good lenses. Quick side note, with the Nexus 5's camera, if you move into the minimum focus distance really up close, the optics of the camera itself generates some bokeh. You might want to play with that. Now, before we move on to the regular camera mode, let's quickly touch upon the video mode for a second. Functionality wise, things are about the same. You may notice that the preview is in full screen. That's due to the fact that the video is taken in 16:9 aspect ratio, same as that of the screen. We can digitally zoom in while taking video, except in this case we get a vertical bar and that shows how much we have zoomed in or out. Pressing the volume button doesn't take photos in video mode. And now the most important function of the app, the regular camera mode. Before I proceed into talking about picture quality, I need to mention that the app will work on different phones, but the quality will vary from phone to phone based on the phone's camera hardware. At software level, there was one difference that I noticed. Over here, Nexus 4 on the right, with HDR mode turned off, we are allowed to adjust the brightness. Nexus 5 on the left, we are allowed to do the same. But when we turn the HDR mode on, only Nexus 4 allows the brightness to be adjusted. In Nexus 5, the brightness adjustment icon disappears. With regards to the camera itself, it's about the same as it was before. The quality, there isn't much of a variation from before. With the regular camera, there really isn't much to talk about. So let's move on to the HDR mode. So let us first understand what HDR mode is actually doing. Let's consider this scenario. Notice the rock on the right with some shrub on it. Rest of the picture is pretty dark. As we turn up the brightness, the cliff on the opposite becomes more visible, so does the forest below. But the rock to our right and many other places where there is direct sunlight is totally overexposed, and we can say it's completely burnt. And this is a very common problem. Often in situations like this, we traditionally needed to decide which one is our subject and leave the surrounding areas either over or underexposed. Now that is becoming a thing of the past with HDR mode. Now the rocks on the right, although a little bit bright but has sufficient amount of detail and clarity. On the left, the cliff wall is visible, although the bottom bit is a bit dark, and the forest at the background is very clearly visible, and we've gone from this to this. The overall picture as a whole has a better composition. That was with long distance photography. At close range, things are quite similar as well. This picture is without HDR. The bottom left corner of the picture is fairly dark, whilst the top right corner where there's a lot of sun, it's almost burnt out white. And also the part of the hat where there is sunlight, the weaving is almost invisible because it's all overexposed. Not a bad picture as it is, but with HDR mode on, there's a lot more detail and the balance is much better. Where it was completely overexposed before, the color now is much better on the table, and also the weaving of the hat is much more visible. Once again, before and after. From another slightly different angle, this time the shade sail on the top of the picture you see is being a little bit overexposed, and then with HDR mode on, same results again, better colors, better textures. This is another HDR picture taken using the first release of Android 4.4. Now I'm showing you this in order to make a little bit of comparison from before and after. See, the word indulge is slightly out of focus and there's quite a bit of noise grain around it. So comparing the old and the new, there's quite a bit of improvement that's gone in. For example, the color of the sky, the grass is more accurate. The overall picture itself is a little bit sharper, and there appears to be a sense of more contrast than before. So HDR by definition should be balancing the brightness in the light and shadow areas. As a result, the colors would improve, yes. However, the software itself is reducing noise, and let me show you how. The noise grains are more visible in a black subject, so you see around the darker areas of this mouse it's filled with grain, and the mousepad as well. Also, the logo of the mouse is slightly soft. With HDR mode on, a sharper image overall, and noise has been reduced to a great degree. It's still there, which means when we are taking photos in low light conditions, which can be very often, we are much better off using the HDR mode on. And this photo was taken using a DSLR. Practically no noise grains. Yes, the photo was taken using manual mode because the camera allows it. However, in the Google's camera app, we don't have that option, but more on that as we progress. Just quickly once again, no HDR, HDR, DSLR. So far we've seen that the camera app is trying to mimic a DSLR as best as it can. It's getting quite close, but of course it's not going to replace a DSLR. There are times when you might want to turn the HDR off. For in this case, the background is quite boring. You can see the tools and as such in the garage. HDR tries to brighten the darker areas, but for this picture to work, we need the dark areas to remain dark. Yes, as far as creative photography goes, this is something that we can play around with. Or for general use when you're out and about, you want to take a photo, this will do just fine. Okay, time to talk about the negatives. In video mode, when the video is being recorded, if we touch the screen, that doesn't take a picture, and there isn't any dedicated icon to be able to take a picture when the video is being recorded. And if we press the volume controller, the slider shows up on the screen for volume adjustment, but that doesn't take a photo either, and this has been a complaint from some people. In video mode, there was a time-lapse feature as well, which functionally was quite okay, and then now it's gone. The next thing, by an overwhelming majority, is the lack of options. When it comes to tweaking the app to suit the user, both the settings menu and the camera settings are down to bare minimum. Not that we're asking for any more, just that these features and settings were available before. Taking them away benefited us. How exactly? And something that a lot of people are asking for is if we could adjust the aspect ratio. Yes, 4:3 is the native aspect ratio of the camera, but all of the screens, or at least majority of the devices using Android, has a screen aspect ratio of 16:9. So if we could have the option of taking photos in either 4:3 or 16:9, that'd be great. So in conclusion, I'd like to say that Google has made some decisions that many of us, let's say, cannot agree with. At a technical level, the software has progressed and the HDR software has come a long way. I'm really curious to see whether the upcoming update of Android will update the camera too. As far as taking photos is concerned, this app and the phone makes a decent combo. And for someone who is on the go, it will do the job well. And if you are feeling inspired, you can have some fun too. Thank you for watching this video. I hope you've enjoyed it. What you liked or disliked about this video, please be sure to leave a note on the comment section below, and please make sure to subscribe in order to stay updated with our latest upcoming videos. Hope to see you next time. Bye for now.